Díomh agus fáilte ar ais. You're all very welcome to another episode of Irish in Toronto. Today I'll be chatting with Bronwyn Brennan. Bronwyn is a 24-year-old writer based in Toronto. The Boy From Dublin is her debut novel, inspired by her grandfather's life and stories. She currently runs a small hockey school based in the city and works extensively with the girls division, concentrating her efforts on growing women's hockey and guiding young athletes towards the collegiate level and beyond. In this episode, we discuss Bronwyn's Irish roots, her passion for storytelling, and her journey playing and coaching hockey. I would still encourage people to download the episodes and to share them with friends and family. Downloads are the easiest indicator for me to gauge how many people I'm reaching with these conversations, so I would really appreciate it. I begin our chat by asking Bronwyn what it was like growing up in an Irish household in Toronto.
My experience growing up in an Irish household is probably pretty similar to most people who have Irish families. Or just, Italian families, even in that kind of just genre. A lot of like storytelling, loud, boisterous, very, very eccentric, I would say is the highlight. Like everybody's their own character. And it's kind of almost like we would always joke as my mom and my dad would always joke we could have like a reality show just based on the number of characters in the house. But very much ingrained within this idea of storytelling. So every dinner, every breakfast, whatever it was, literally any point where anybody's opening their mouth, somehow everything's entrenched within a story, whether a bit fictitious, most times embellished, but very much, ingrained within the storytelling aspect. And that was the only way you could really get heard, is if you were able to kind of coin a way of, your discussions and making them interesting to the point where people were wanting to listen to you, because there were so many people. We have a big family. I think it's like 20 something, not obviously in my immediate, but within my like cousins and aunts and grandparents and whatever. So if you wanted to get heard amongst the 20 people at the table, you really had to make sure that what you were saying was worth listening to. But lots of fun. And I think it definitely did, I think that thankfully, because I had that, I learned pretty early on the different aspects of storytelling from a very authentic and genuine way. Like not something that had to be taught in school where it was like, oh, you start with this and then the introduction goes to this and then the plot comes and the climax and whatever. It was just always like you kind of knew the beats to hit. And that really did help me when I started writing my book.
Good. Yeah, I was going to ask, is there I suppose, could there be a set like algorithm to writing a novel today that will sell?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think, when I started writing this book, there was a lot of, like, I would look up things and there were different, beat sheets that you could get off like online and whatever. I don't know whether it's necessary to like follow one specific structure. I think obviously you want to have, a general outline of like where you're going with your story. But for me, like I'm definitely what would be considered like a discovery writer, where I just kind of write, and as I move, I get, thoughts from other beta readers or editors, and then they kind of tell me, okay, this is like a little too, we're going too much on this topic or on this subject within the story, and you might want to bring it back or dial it in. But I don't know whether there's a specific like concrete way to tackle writing. I think that, writing is such a creative endeavor where you really want to move with where the wind takes you and where your pen takes you, really. And I think that if you try to like make it too like blocked up, where you're like, I'm going to start here and then it's going to go here and then it's going to go here. Like it's a good idea to have that general outline just so you know where you're going. But I think that you need to allow yourself to have that creative flow so that you don't feel like bogged down or tied into one idea when inevitably something new, some other creative inspiration takes you. At some point in the novel writing journey.
Yeah. That's good to hear. Yeah. The storytelling kind of atmosphere that you grew up with, I presume it was oral for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was. It made a huge difference. Like, I think, my grandpa was my papa, we call him. He was the best storyteller in the house, and he's whom the story kind of began. Like when I first wrote this book, it was very much based on his life, and then as it moved, it became less so and more just inspired by the stories that he told at the dinner table, which, like I said, who knew if those were true or not. He definitely was the person who kind of led me in that direction to being like, you can take this and run with it and also build off of your own experiences and kind of move them into my stories or, generational stories. Very, I think there's a beautiful, beautiful, like kind of coming together of that. I don't know if that makes sense.
Oh, it does. The kind of line you hear is, the Irish never let the truth get in the way of a good story. Yes. Is that kind of something that was...
Yeah, that was my dedication. So my book opens up with that as like, now here's another letting the truth get in the way of this good story. And that was very much like my grandpa. That was how he was. Like my grandma, like they were like a perfect opposites attract kind of situation. Him and his wife, my grandmother. She would be very much like on his case when he would be telling a story. She'd be like, that didn't happen. That did not happen. That did not happen. He'd be like, yes, it did. Yes, it did. And he'd always have this kind of like quirky eyebrow raise. Like, I think anybody who knew him would remember that. He was very like, you just see his eyebrows go up and his ears kind of wiggle. And they're just, you knew it was like, this is probably not exactly what happened, but he knew how to make the story worth listening to. Do you know what I mean? And that was, I think, the biggest thing that I took away as I started my own writing journey is, like, of course, as I wanted to be kind of authentic to who he was and pay tribute to the life that he lived. But I also knew that I wanted this to be my own story and a story that I was able to promote and sell without feeling, you know, like, oh, this is too true to my family lineage or history or skeletons in the closet or whatever. So that gave me kind of the green light when I started working on this book. And I knew that I could play with that a little bit. I could play within the margins. I could play within, you know, taking kernels of truth and fable and weaving them together and seeing what kind of came out, and it ended up being a really, really transformative process, and definitely something that helped me as well unpack my own like grief and mourning when he passed away.
When did he pass away?
He passed away in August 2022.
Okay, so you got work on this pretty soon.
Yeah, so pretty soon after. He had passed away in August 2022, and then that year I had just started, or that was my 4th year of undergrad. And at the same time, my dad had gotten sick. So he was in and out of the hospital a lot, and we were just kind of like dealing with that as well. And so there's just a lot of, you know, commotion, I think, like internally within my own household. And then as we came up to summer of 2023, I actually had planned a trip with my girlfriends to go to Ireland and Portugal. Kind of a disjointed adventure, but it ended up working out really great. And we had gone back to, you know, Dublin and just done a little bit of a sightseeing trip around. And I hadn't been back to Ireland since I was probably like 11 prior to that. Like that, or maybe a little bit older, like 12, 13, maybe around there. But it had been like a good stint of like maybe 10 years since I'd been back. And so that had really opened my eyes when I took like kind of stepped foot back into Ireland after, you know, my grandfather passing away. And just, it very much opened my eyes being like, okay, all of a sudden I'm remembering all these stories that he told at the dinner table, and I'm seeing the places where they would have taken place. You know what I mean? And so then my own imagination started to run wild. And, you know, I started to, you know, build up this little story, and it was really just a short story at the beginning. And then it kind of bloomed into what it is now, which is a full-length novel.
It is a full-length novel.
Yeah.
It's, that's interesting. Sometimes I do forget that you are young. I don't want to go on that too much, but I presume there are many people, I know you studied English at university, I understand that, but to be able to put together a novel this early, it's usually quite a mature thing to do, you know, in a writer's process. I know we hear about the young authors because they're unusual, I think. But for you, was it a goal or something that just happened to happen that you wrote a novel? Like, did you always want to be Bronwyn Brennan, the novelist?
I don't think I ever knew what I wanted to be. I still don't think I know what I want to be. I think I'm like constantly changing that, like what I want to do and what I want to be. I think that at the core of who I am, I've always wanted to be able to achieve things. Like, and that sounds very vague and broad, but I think that I think that's in part due to the fact that I grew up playing sports. Like, trying to chase some goal was always just innately part of my life. So I never, like when I was a kid, I loved books. Like, I was huge into reading. Like, I would hide inside the classrooms during recess just to read. Like, cause I was just I loved reading. I would stay up late, like, when the lights were out, my mom would check on us because she knew I'd be reading all the time. And so I'd be perched up on the windowsill reading by the moonlight, literally, to read these books. And a lot of times they were well beyond what I should have been reading at that age, just in terms of subject matter and whatever. But I loved reading. I just totally immersed within it. But I don't know if I ever really had the conscious thought that I wanted to be an author. I just knew that I loved stories and I loved talking. And I always had that part of me, you know, just survive very strong. And so then I went to university, and then that had just ended up being, you know, a pretty, like, a natural route to go into it because I wanted to go to law school. And so I was like, okay, I need to take a class that, like, I could do decently well in. So I started doing, you know, undergrad in English literature because I was like, I love reading. I love writing. This is an easy kind of segue for me to do this, and also manage playing college hockey. And then from there, I kind of started working on little short stories whenever I got creative inspiration. I was writing very frequently in undergrad, but more so just to process my own emotions and experiences as a young person in a city like Toronto, and with, you know, the pressure of being a college athlete and the different endeavors that I wanted to pursue, and my own personal, I guess, pressures that I put on myself. So that helped me work through that. And then by the end of my 4th year, I was like, I got one short story published in like a school journal here. And I was like, okay, maybe I could actually do something with this. And that kind of was how it got there. But there was never an innate thing where I was like, I'm going to become an author.
Yeah.
It just happened, I guess.
It happened quite early, which is
yeah.
great.
I think it's, people always say that. I don't think of myself as like very young, I guess. I know that I am young, but in my head, I'm like, I don't think that. Like, I'm like, oh, maybe I could have done this when I was like 19. Like, I don't know. Like, I just don't feel like I did it that young. I guess I also do know that in the age of social media, like you see a lot of people promoting like kind of their accomplishments very early. So, you know, like I know of a girl who wrote a book who she was like, I think 17 and she published her first like novella and things like that. And, you know, like some of my favorite authors published their, you know, best-selling $1 million, like, you know, like huge big book deals when they were like 22. So in my brain, I was like, oh, I'm like actually behind the curve. Like, I don't know.
No, I know.
I don't know why. I think you just, I think naturally I just would always compare myself to like, you know, what are other people doing? And also I think, you know, most people my age, a lot of my friends anyway, they're very successful individuals, very smart, and they all have like, you know, big jobs in banking, or they're going to like med school, or they have like jobs. One of my friends is like neuroscience. I don't even know. It's too smart for me. And you see them achieving all these huge things. And then for most of the time that was happening, where they were achieving these, you know, big promotions or accolades or getting into master's programs, I was not getting into master's programs, and I was working on a book that nobody really knew about. So I would just be like, oh, I can't come out today because I'm writing. And they'd be like, hey, like, good luck with that little adventure, I guess, like, whatever. And so there was no guarantee that it was ever going to come to fruition. And I had so many rejections on the book originally. So I was like, you know, this is kind of like I don't know if this is just a hopeless pursuit or not. So when it did, you know, get published, I don't know if I even still to this day have really let it process that it's like that I have published, like that I have a book. I don't know if that's really like come to me yet. And definitely not like there's never really been a thought where I'm like, oh, I'm so young. Like I feel like I've been surrounded by so many people who are very high achieving, especially at U of T, that you don't like, you kind of, I don't know if this is a good or bad thing. You get kind of conditioned to think like, oh, well, I'm behind the curve.
I know.
Even if you aren't.
Yeah, well, we all compare ourselves. It doesn't matter where you're at. Mm-hmm. And then if you do sign $1 million deal for a book, then you'll be like, well, someone else signed, you know, 1.5, and you just start wondering like where it never stops, which can be a good thing. You can keep yourself ambitious and honest and all that. And you do seem like an ambitious person, but that's interesting. You don't view yourself as being behind the curve. Yeah, I don't know why I do. I just need to like. That's one thing that I definitely like struggle with. I think is just as a person is I always think that I could be doing better than what I am doing. Which again, I think always goes back to the sports aspect, because it's just, you know, there's that drive to compete. And then the thing I think that happens when you get out of sports is that there's no longer other people necessarily to compete against. It's yourself. Even though I'm like conscious of what other people are doing, it's really, I think, just me versus me. And that bar keeps getting raised. And it's just an impossible standard. And it sounds depressing, I guess, in a way. But for me, I don't find it at all like pressing or too hard or whatever. I find it very motivating for me. And I think it gives me purpose and drive in my life. And so I'm actually quite thankful for that aspect of the way that I think. I can totally empathize. I don't like sharing too much, but after running a race last year, I was sitting in a cold bath afterwards, and my partner asked me, she came in and said, are you okay? Do you need help? What are you thinking about? And I was like, just thinking about like how I could have done better. Yeah. And the race was over like an hour, and I trained for like 4 or 5 months for it. And she's like, enjoy the moment. And I was like, yeah, no, I am, this part of this reflecting and improving to me is enjoyment. But so I can comprehend that. Yeah, it's a very like, I think it's a very strange thing. I think a lot of people kind of don't. Well, I don't know if I feel like everybody to some degree has that too, where they are conscious of, okay, I could do a little bit better here. I think it's just a natural part of being a human, I think, you know, 100%. And it's a good thing. You want to always be improving. Obviously, to a degree, my mom is very big on that. She's like, you need to like let go and just be like happy with who you are. And it's not that I'm not happy. I just feel like I could always do a little bit better. Even now with the book, like there's bits that I go back and look and I'm like, oh, I could have done better on that part, or I could have expanded on this chapter, or I could have pushed this part of the plot a little further, whatever. But you can't change what's been done. And you know what? I'm still proud of what came out. So as you should be. Yeah. As you should be. Your mother is the longer I spoke to her at your book launch, the stronger her accent became. Oh yeah. She must have had a huge effect on you in terms of the Irish my God, culture. Yes. My mom speaks Gaelic, which I'm always on her case about the fact that she never taught us it. You're blaming her for it. I am blaming her for it, but we know why she wouldn't. Me and my sister my Nana would come over all the time, and she also speaks Gaelic. And so when we were kids, my mom and my Nana would be speaking Gaelic to talk about things that we weren't allowed to hear.
So every time they went into, Gaelic, I knew automatically it's either about something about me and my sister about acting up, or about like who knew what it was about, right? But he used to drive me crazy. I'd sit there and try to figure it out, but I didn't have any there's nothing I could have gone off of. I knew like the little words, like she would tell us to sit down and be quiet. I knew that. I was like, all right. Those were the ones that I knew, but she really was pretty heavy on teaching us French instead because of...
She spoke to me about that, which I found interesting.
Yeah, because so my mom speaks a lot of languages, which is really interesting. She's an extremely intelligent woman. So, but when she moved over here, she learned French, and then obviously, as she had kids, she was like, I'm going to teach them French because that's the second language here. But yeah, I'm always on her case about it. I'm like, you should have taught us like Gaelic because it's such a cool like language to have, and she has it very strongly still. But she definitely had a huge presence. Like my mom was born in Galway, and then she was raised in Dublin, and she like I said, my entire house is essentially, if you walk in there, it's basically a shrine to Ireland. It's like there's Irish paraphernalia everywhere. It's we've got like everything on the walls, like we got the Celtic crosses everywhere, like so she was very much an influence in how I tackled this book. I definitely went over to her for questions and things like that, because as much as I know stories, from a cultural perspective, I didn't want to be writing things incorrectly just because I'm like, oh, I'm Irish because my parents are from there, which obviously makes me Irish to some degree, but not like born and raised where I would understand firsthand what the culture's like, especially because I'm writing a historical fiction. Like I'm talking about 1950s Dublin. Yeah. So it's pretty far from where I am, and I didn't want to be reaching too far beyond what I knew. So she was a big help, as well as my grandma and my nana and my dad and everyone else, and then my own research that I did. But she was really, really a key, not only a key influence in how I tackled the book, but also I guess, I don't know what I would call her, like a firsthand reference point. Like I'd be like, hey, can you check this out and make sure that I've got the language down right, or whatever it was that I was talking about.
Yeah. That's great. Because it's the second generation person like yourself. It's always interesting to see what direction they go in. I know you've embraced hockey, and we'll talk about that. You haven't spent a huge amount of time in Ireland, but there's still a special place there for you. Yeah. It's just interesting how you've brought to your friends that you grew up with, that you mentioned earlier on. How do you think they would describe your relationship with Ireland?
Oh my God, they'd be like, she's Irish.
Okay.
Because my name, like, just from the get-go, Bronwyn Brennan, like, it's just, like, the whole, like, that plus, I'm, like, covered in cladders right now. Like, it just, like, my grandpa, everybody in my family, my papa, my grandma, my nana, my granddad, all of them, very Irish, very thick Irish accents. My mom, thick Irish accent when I was younger. Now it's a little bit more...
It came out.
My friends call it transatlantic because they hear it. I don't hear it. Like I can't hear that she has an Irish accent.
She's your mother,
because I just don't think that I can't hear it. But she definitely does have it when she's out in public, because she tries to become like, she wants to really enunciate her words, and then it becomes very crystal clear that she has an accent. But yeah, my friends would 100% be like, oh, she's Irish. Like it was just a core fundamental aspect of who I was. My like we would always have like if we made up sports teams or anything, like I was always like the Celtics, like it was something. Do you know what I mean? It was always that. And all of the literature that I read as a kid, especially, or the influences of literature that I was working with, were Irish. Like Joyce, Kavanagh was a huge influence for me for this book for whatever reason. I don't know if it was just because I was reading his poetry works at the same time that I was writing this, so then it just started coming into that. But my grandpa, whom the book is like inspired by, he was a big Yeats fan, so there was a lot of that too. And my house is, like I said, littered with just Irish things everywhere. So we have a ton of Irish books, Irish poetry, Irish essays collections. And I go back as often as I can. I went back last summer and the summer prior, so last 2 summers. And then when we were younger, before we started playing hockey, we were there all the time.
Yeah,
so,
makes sense.
But then when hockey started to pick up and, me and my sister got really good at it, then it was, there was no time because we were just playing constantly. So we didn't really travel.
Let's talk about hockey.
Oh, yeah, the hockey.
Because when we first chatted a few months ago, we chatted about writing and reading. And we also chatted about like what it's like to be good at a sport, but also then you're not at the top of the thing.
Exactly.
It's like, this is tough. This is a tough environment to be in. But do you want to talk about your hockey?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, I started playing hockey a little late. Like when I was younger, we did a lot more. I think my mom was trying to my mom's an academic. And so my dad is the sporty guy and my mom is the academic. She played sports here and there, like badminton and things like that. So we did that, here and there, tennis, whatever. But I never really took to it. And then we went into dance. And then I was like, yeah, this is boring. Like, I need something more.
How old are you at
I
this
was
stage?
like 9.
Okay.
I was like, I need something more with action. So then my dad he grew up in Scarborough. And so he knew of kind of a play. He was like, oh, well, I could put her into the boys league. Because he was like, my friend from elementary school, I guess, was playing in this league. And she was a girl as well. And so he was like, okay, you know what, I'll sign Bronwyn up for this or whatever. So I ended up doing...
Sorry to interrupt you. There's this little girl, there's this small... The number of girls playing hockey is so small that you got signed up for a boys league.
Yeah, so there was no...
And this is in like the...
This is in early 2000s, so like 2008 probably it would have been. Maybe, 2009.
It's hard to comprehend from my perspective, but go on.
It's pretty crazy. So it's now blossomed into something totally massive and on its own. But when I was younger, it was kind of still at that turning point where there were girls' leagues, but like my parents weren't aware of them. So we had started in the boys' league. And so me and my little friend from school, who was a girl as well, we were playing in the boys' league, and we played there for like, I don't know, maybe a year. And I'd gotten very good over that year period. And then I ended up my dad had found the girls' league, and he put me into the girls. And then from there, I was really bad, like really not good compared to like the other girls, because I had started playing rep at this time. It's low level rep, but I was in rep. And I think it was just generally because I was pretty large, like not like I was just very tall for my age. So they were like, okay, well, she looks athletic enough, like we'll take her, and they needed an extra spot. So I got lucky and got on this rep team. But I was nowhere near as good as the rest of the girls on the team, to the point where I was getting like left behind at tournaments. Like they would just like not tell my parents that there was a tournament happening, and then I would be like at home like doing like Bella Dancerella like at home, like, and my friends would be at like a hockey tournament in, Caledon, Ontario or whatever. And anyway, so I think my dad had figured that out. He was like, okay, I think that they're leaving her behind because she's not very good. So they started signing me up for like extra classes around that time. And I liked them a lot, and I started getting really good because all the kids weren't doing anything extra. They were just going on games or extra tournaments and then taking long stints off. And while they were doing that, I was adding up on the stuff that I was doing, and it was just extra skating, a lot of extra skating. And somewhere along the line, I got really good at skating specifically. I couldn't really do much else, but I was very good at skating. Like I skated very smooth, very strong, and I started to mimic the boys who were like AAA, a little bit higher. And so I just copied the way that they stood, the way that their gait was on the ice and that kind of thing. And that really did start to build and build and build. So then by the time I got to high school, I was very strong. And so I ended up making some of the top level teams, in, I would say grade 7, 8, 9, that age group. And I trained pretty much exclusively with the boys outside of, and like I said, this was, I guess, 2014, 13, around there. There wasn't any like girls only camps. There was maybe like 1 or 2, but they weren't great. So the only other option was to put me in with the boys camps. And so I did all of the boys camps, and some of them were with the guys who were going to the OHL in the next year or whatever. And I was way below their caliber, like could not keep up. Well, I could keep up enough to be there because the head instructor of this one camp called Hyperfit, it's pretty well known in like Scarborough. He, really nice guy, lovely guy, Ben Davis. He let me come out to the boys skates. And so I would do that. And I eventually kind of got to the point where I was like, okay, they hate me and I'm not very good, but I'm going to keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing. And no matter how many times they were like, you suck, this kid sucks, or they'd be like,
they would say that to you?
Oh, not to me, but I would hear them in the other room. They'd be like, she's so bad, like she can't pass, da, da, da. And so no matter what they would say, I would just keep going. Because in my mind, I was like, if I can find a way to keep my head above water with these guys, when I go back to my girls' league, I'm going to be leagues above everyone else. And this like anxiety that I'm fighting against every time I step on the ice or in the gym with these boys is nothing compared to, or is going to be, it's going to help me in great strides when I'm actually competing in a championship game or in a, game where I have a university scout coming to look at me. So yeah, that's kind of how it moved.
You sound like you just seem like you deal with not failure, but like any type of criticism like really well. Is that something that was ingrained into you as a child? Or?
I don't know if I was very anxious. Like I would there was a period of time where my parents always joke where I would like cry before every game, like burst into tears, like could not, like I would be full blown panic attack before every game. And it wasn't because I was like worried about, like, I don't know what it was. Maybe it was just performance anxiety. But I was just a very anxious kid. When people would criticize me, I had very strict coaches and very intense coaches. I think it was just a thing where I started to get angry, I guess, in a way, but not angry in a way where I was going to lash out at them, but I would like internalize that and use it as motivation, where I was like, okay, you think that about me, I'm going to prove you wrong. So everything about me is, I guess I've leads to my book. It's like everything that has ever happened to me. It's like when I find somebody thinking that I'm not as good as I know I can be, and maybe they're right, I'm not there yet. In my brain, I'm like, okay, no one expects anything of me. That's great. I'm going to prove them wrong. I'm going to prove them wrong in a tenfold, because being underestimated, I think, is one of the best things that you can have in your wheelhouse, to be totally honest, right? Because if you fail, whatever, everybody thought that you were going to fail anyway, and it's just kind of like, whatever, no skin off my nose. But if you do better than that, then everybody's like, all of a sudden, they're forced to look at you. They're forced to, it's kind of like that quote, be so good that they can't ignore you. That was very much me in high school when I was competing with these boys and trying to get on these teams where I knew that people didn't think I was very good. And I was very good at using that as motivation. And I don't know whether that comes from my parents. They were very much like that as well. But yeah, I mean, that's just been a very big part of who I am, I guess.
Yeah. And it led you here to where we're sitting, U of T.
Yeah. U of T was also pretty intense as well. I mean, U of T hockey is a very good program, led by Vicky Sinahara here. She's like all-time Olympian. And so we had like 35 girls on our roster. Like there's not, that's an exaggeration, but there's a lot of girls on the team, and they were all very, very good. And so the compete level was insane. And then not to mention, I was at Trinity. And so I remember getting into school there, and I was so excited because I was like, oh my God, I studied so hard. I got in here. I'm like so excited. And then I get there and I'm sitting down at like our first dinner with like the kids at the table, and I'm listening to them talk, and I'm like, oh my God, I am an idiot. Like, I do not know any of this.
Everyone has that experience at U of T. I met two Irish guys who were, I think they were starting off here in first year, two Irish women.
Yeah.
And they both told me that their first few weeks here, they just thought, oh shit, everyone's too smart.
Yeah.
I think people, as you know, can use words in a certain way that can make them sound in a particular conversation extremely intelligent.
Yeah.
We've all probably done it ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But it is sad when you're on the receiving end of it, you think, I don't even know what that means. Or the references are going over my head.
Yeah. There was a lot of that definitely at dinner. And then, I mean, I think because I was playing hockey too, I was struggling with the management of both things. So there was a lot of pressure. I wasn't performing to the level where I was going to play very much at as on the hockey team. So I wasn't getting a ton of ice time. And then at the same time, I was going up against, essays written by these people who had much stronger vocabulary than I did, who had more time to study than I did, who were able to just, frankly, were smarter than I was. And I'm like, that's not something that I'm ashamed to admit. It was just the way that it was, right? And so in both aspects of my life, when I came here, I was failing. There was no, like, ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like, I wasn't getting playing time. I was sitting in the stands, not on the bench. I was, undressed in the stands, watching the games go by for an entire season. And then at the same time, I'm in my classes, and I wasn't able to, keep up very well. I mean, it wasn't that I was getting terrible marks, but I was like low 70s for my entire high school career. And I went to a pretty good academic high school. I was high 90s student. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to get out of this?
It's tough. I work with what we call a first year check-in program, where we work with first years, and a lot of them come from places where they were getting high 90s. Yeah. And then they come here, they might be doing well, but it's not the same. It's not the same, they really struggle with that. But that's life, isn't it? Yeah. We all go through that. And I think, I don't know, you seem to have done really well with dealing with that. Do you, I don't want to push too much, but any type of the struggles that you have, we spoke a lot about writing being a cathartic thing. Do you put some of the struggles you have in your life into your writing and it makes 100%, you feel better?
100%. Yeah, I think I definitely, like that first year was when I started writing. Because like I said, I wasn't playing. So I had a lot of free time in between, the games. Like if I wasn't, like we would go on our away tournaments or trips or whatever we were going, and I would bring my laptop on, and if I didn't have any schoolwork to be done, I would start writing these, I would not dare call them poems because I am no poet. There is nothing, there is no structure in anything that I was writing, but I still have them to this day. And I had it in a folder on my computer titled Words. And it was just, and I called it Words because it was literally just words. I wasn't putting, there was no, method to the madness. It was just everything that I felt I would write down. And sometimes it would come out like a mini essay. Sometimes it would come out like a poem. Sometimes it would be a fictitious story. Sometimes it would literally just be like a diary entry or whatever. But as I would be going on these away trips, we'd leave on Thursday night or whatever, come back Sunday, and I wasn't playing, and I was missing school.
A lot of time to miss. I can empathize with that so much.
It's so much. It's so much, and hockey's a winter sport, or an all-season sport. Yeah. So other sports would be done at, the fall. Other would be starting in January, whatever. Ours went from August to April. Yeah. So there was no breaks, nonstop, and our team was good. So we were going to nationals every year, finals every year. It was we were never not playing hockey. So whenever I was on the bus trips or in like the hotel rooms, like waiting to go to these things, if I knew I wasn't playing and I was trying to process that, I would start writing, because there was just kind of this more like melancholic part of myself that I think is just innate to who I am as a person, that I was able to kind of pull from like the depths of who I am as, whatever it comes from, but I don't know, but I would pull it out and I would create these little folders and start writing, and it would really help me kind of process, number one, the fact that for the first time in my life since I was young, this aspect of me who I've always been very good at hockey, and that was always part of who I was. In high school, people would be like, oh, she's the hockey player, like whatever. And I got committed to U of T very young too. I was 15 when I verbally committed to them. So, my whole life I've been very good at this sport. And then all of a sudden I get here and I've had, the jersey up on the wall for, my entire high school life, because I really was excited to go to U of T and and I'm not playing. And I don't see there's no inkling that might change, and it didn't. And so that was, I think, very difficult to process. So the writing definitely helped with it, even though I don't think I was ever writing about hockey. I think I was just writing about the feeling, per se.
That's interesting. I wish I had known that 15 years ago or 10 years ago. I think I just went through scenarios in my head whenever stuff went wrong, but writing has helped recently. In the last couple of years at least, even if no one's going to read it myself, I just find it so cathartic. Go in terms of your relationship with Ireland. Do you introduce yourself as being Irish?
Like, it depends on like who I'm talking to. Like, if I when I'm traveling, I'm obviously Canadian, because I'm not gonna be like, oh, I'm Irish, and they're like, you sound like an American, because everywhere you go, like in Europe, they're like, you're an American. You're like, no, I'm Canadian. But in Canada, like, or in Toronto, because it's such like a diverse place, when we were in school, you would never be like, oh, I'm Canadian. Like, it wasn't like, if I was talking to somebody, like, oh, where are you from? We would never be like, oh, I'm Canadian. Like, everybody, we would have these like diversity days, or like, I don't know what you would call them, like cultural days, I guess. And everybody was like, would bring food from their culture, because everybody's parents were from somewhere. There were some people who were like, first, like, so far back generation Canadian that they would just do like maple syrup events, whatever. But for the most part, everyone was like Italian, Portuguese, like, I don't know, Hispanic, like whatever. Everyone came from somewhere. So when I was in school, I would always be like, oh, I'm Irish. That was very much what it was.
How did that make you feel?
Great. I loved it. I'm so proud of the fact that my family are Irish, like so proud. I would argue that I'm probably the most proud first generation, like, or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, I'm so passionate about it. I love it. I love the culture. Growing up, like, I have such fond memories of going back to Ireland when I was a child, like, just from weddings to family events, like, and very much to the nature. Like, and I mean, like this, like the soil of Ireland. Like, I have very fond memories of making daisy chains in like fields, or going over to the cliffs, and like, just like little things, I used to stay in these like cottages out in like the, like in the, I don't even know where we were, the countryside, I can't remember. And we would be out there, me and my sister in our matching like jumpers, and we'd be out there, with our teddy bears, and my mom would be like, we had I was very fortunate that my mom kept a lot of the Irish culture like within our upbringing, whether we were here or when we went back to Ireland. And so when I would come back from these trips, I would just be like so invigorated with it. I don't know if that's the right word, but I would just be so passionate about it. And I would be, I would nonstop talk about it from the time that I was like little to high school to now. And so it's just, like I said, my grandfather is a very, very proud Irishman. And so I think that made a big, influence on it. And as well, my mom and my dad, everybody in my family is very proud Irishman. So that just really came to me as well, naturally. Yeah.
How do you find when you meet other Irish people, apart from myself, obviously?
I mean, yeah, I definitely would say, I always start when I say like, oh, I'm Irish, like, if I'm careful with it, with Irish people here. It depends on the person. Like, with older individuals, they're very like, oh, that's wonderful, like, tell me about your parents or whatever. But I do have some friends who are younger, like my age, and they moved here from Ireland when they were like 11 or 9 or in and around that age group. And they, like, if I say, oh, like, I'm Irish, it's kind of becomes like a thing where it's like, well, no, you're not, because you weren't born there. Do you know what I mean? So there's a bit of that. So I'm conscious of that. And I can't understand why somebody would feel that way. It's like, I wasn't raised there. So in a way, I'm not. Do you know what I mean? Even if I could say, my mom, we were back all the time when I was kids. My mom speaks Gaelic, everything from our food to our literature to like, everything to our jewelry, like, was Irish. Like, that still to some degree doesn't make me that. You know what I mean? So I do understand it, but it definitely has put, I guess, a little bit of not an insecurity, but maybe an apprehension within myself about how I address, my heritage and who I am as a person, right? When it comes to being Irish.
Yeah. Do you ever consider yourself living there?
Yes. Oh my God. All the time. Constantly. I love it. Like, I really do love it. I think I would want to live, I don't know if I'd want to live in Dublin, to be honest. I think I would like to live outside of the city in like a little bit more of a smaller town.
Okay.
Recently, actually, I don't know if I'm like supposed to say this, but I thought it would be a funny story. My dad was thinking about, basically my mom's family have a golf course in, I don't even know, it's just outside of Galway. I'm not sure the specific like location, but they are selling it. And so my dad, like I said, very proud Irishman. Like, he always has been wanting to go back. My mom, born and raised there, so she has always wanted to go back. She went back for university. She only really stayed and stuck in Toronto once she had me and my sister. So they've definitely been like looking that direction for a long time now. She goes back for work because she works for an Irish company very often. And so they were looking at purchasing this golf course. And I was so excited because I was like, this will be the best opportunity for me. Like, I want to go back over there and work on more of my writing. I just love the culture. Like, I think that, you know, one thing that we really lack in North America is that kind of like community. Do you know what I mean? Like that, oh, I finished work, I'm going to go for a pint or something like that. Like, just not even that, just like going, there's places to go and sit and have a conversation, have a chat.
Third spaces, yeah.
That doesn't exist. It does, but not really. We have these concrete jungles, right? And you technically do have, you know, bars and places that you can go out and coffee and stuff. But it's just not the same. Like, most people, unless you're physically being like, oh, we're going to organize this time, place, location, like everybody's in on the plan, it's generally not happening. Like, you can't just be like, oh, I'm going to go to my local place and sit down and like just relax. Like, that doesn't happen here. Like, you go home and it's either I'm going to go home and finish my work, or like watch TV and rot for 20, like whatever amount of hours that I have before I have to be back up at work again. Or you're planning with your friends, like, we are going to meet at, you know, Ruby Soho at this time and da-da-da-da-da, and it's very specific. Whereas, you know, the culture in Ireland, at least from what I've experienced in the time that I've gone back and been able to legally drink and go out, there's more of that camaraderie where it's just a natural, everybody gravitates to that location, and I love that part of it. I think that we really lack that, and there's a general sense of that amongst my friends as well.
Yeah, I've kind of bought into that whole being over-organised kind of thing since I moved here. And sometimes I like it, but sometimes I miss the whole, I'm just going here, and if someone joins me, that's great. If not, yeah, so be it. As well, it's a bit looser or something. You like Ruby Soho?
No, just the first bar that I thought of. I'm honestly not like that much of a drinker myself, actually, which is funny. Like, my family are like, they like to have a good time, and I'm like the most I guess lightweight in the family, which is also the funny thing. My friends are always like, you're Irish and you can't, like, whatever, da, 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 but I'm just stopping my thing, really. But I do just love, I think that the slower paced style of living is something that I would really...
Compared to Toronto?
Yeah.
Where did you grow up in Toronto?
We're like North York.
Yeah.
Yeah, so around there.
It's a busy area.
Busy area. When I was in high school, we would do a lot of, like, I would go downtown a lot. So I was like in and out of the bars, probably a little bit too young than I was supposed to be. But so me and my friends would take the subway after school and we'd go down there and we'd be, you know, wherever we were, out and about. So I was very much ingrained within like the Toronto city culture from like the age of 14.
Do you see yourself ever, whether it's to Ireland or to somewhere else? I'm always curious to people.
Yeah,
I know you're young, as we mentioned, but what's the future hold?
I don't know. I mean, I'm applying to law school, so I want to see where that takes me. So obviously, you know, jobs, I'm kind of need to be in a city. But originally, if you had asked me this 3 months ago, I would have been like, I want to move somewhere else. Like, I didn't know, because I wanted to focus on writing full time. Thing is, unfortunately, you do need to make money in life. So I'm looking more like to a different, stricter career right now, just because, and that, again, like I said, when I went to U of T, that was my plan. It was pre-law, and then I was going to go law school right away. And then I took 2 years off to write this book and work and whatever. So things kind of diverted, but I'm going back into that plan as well, even though I'm still writing. But if you'd asked me this like 3 months ago, I would have been like, oh, I want to move somewhere just to write, because I hadn't really gone back in on the idea of like going back to law school, although I think I do miss that busyness of like being in academics, especially now without having to focus on sports at the same time. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not too like strict on where I'm going to be. Obviously Toronto is my home. It's where I've grown up. I know the place like the back of my hand. But I definitely would like to live abroad for a bit of time. I just got my Irish passport. So that was,
congratulations.
Yeah. So that was like one thing. 'Cause I was thinking there's definitely this part of me that does want to move to Ireland for like a period of time. I don't know how long or what the deal would be, but that's definitely a part of it. My mom also wants to move back as well and do kind of like a half and half type of thing. So yeah, so I know, and my dad he'll be over there in a heartbeat if he can, like at any given opportunity. You could just hand him a plane ticket right now. He'd be over there for 6 weeks. Like, so he would be for sure over there. So I think it's definitely something that just depends on what happens with my career in the next, like, I would say 3 years.
We'll bring you back in 3 years and interview you again.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, hopefully I'm like, I don't know. You never know with me. Like, I feel like I'm always like changing directions.
It's good. I think there's an energy off you. I think anybody who meets you would get that energy. And you can tell from your book launch the amount of close friends that they weren't just there, you know, because they know that they knew you and they were happy to see you do well. It was a really nice thing to see. Very cool thing to do. So
no, I'm very lucky that I've been surrounded by like a lot of really good people over the last, I would say, like 10 years. I've really found like a good group that have stuck with me. I have like my 3 close friends that are by my side every, you know, change in the road. And then some of my friends from hockey as well have been really great and stuck around for a long time as well, which is great.
Really hope you enjoyed that chat with Bronwyn Brennan. I had the pleasure of reading her debut novel, The Boy From Dublin, and would highly recommend it. The quality of the writing, as well as the beauty of the storytelling, will make you want to keep reading it as soon as you begin. I'll put a link in the description of this episode with the different ways you can get your hands on the novel. Thanks again, Bronwyn, for writing such a lovely story, and thanks for taking the time to sit down with me and discuss it. Once again, all feedback is welcome. You can email me. My email address is in the description of the podcast, or you can find me on social media. It's always lovely to get messages from strangers and talking about the podcast and their stories of what brought them to Toronto. I would still encourage people to download the episodes and to share them with friends and family. Downloads are the easiest indicator for me to gauge how many people I'm reaching with these conversations, so I would really appreciate it. Thanks to Natalie Barbuzzi, who provided the logo for the podcast, and thanks to Shannon Heaton, who provided the music you are now listening to. You'll find all of her music on Spotify. There'll be another episode of Irish in Toronto in 2 weeks, and until then, slán go fóill.